The Murdershelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised.
Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
To the Murdershelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. Today is one of my special episodes, and I am delighted to be sharing an amazing conversation I had with renowned true crime author Aphrodite Jones on her new book, Dog of War. Now, you're familiar with Aphrodite. I know you are. I had her on the podcast back in 2024. When I featured her book, Levi's Eyes, episode 87 to 90. And that was on serial killer Carl Carlson. Well, she is back with us today because her new book reads like fantasy fiction. You won't believe it is a true story that actually happened. And I have a lot of questions, and I really encourage you to buy this book. It hasn't been publicized, and the whole story behind the events hasn't really been explored until now. Dog of War is a must-read. I have enjoyed many of Aphrodite's other works, including Cruel Sacrifice. Her books have been adapted into TV shows and film. But what I admire most about Aphrodite Jones is her commitment to writing for the right reasons. She shows a deep respect for the victims, the survivors, and their families. So with that, Aphrodite Jones, welcome back to the Murdershelf Book Club podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill. I really like your podcast. It's great.
Thank you so much. Well, I really like your books. And this latest book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness. Normally, my process is I read, I have Post-its, I write down notes or insights or questions. And I wound up not writing anything because I was so surprised, taken aback.
Flabbergasted?
Completely. This is a story like none other. And you know how many books I have read.
I know. And that's the thing. And how many true crime stories I've been involved in, scenarios I've been involved in for 35 years, not just with books, with my TV show and everything else. This is the strangest true crime story ever. That is my take on it. And anyone I've spoken to about it say the same thing. Like they can't believe it.
But at the same time, I haven't heard about this.
I know. It hasn't had coverage because people thought it was about a dog mauling, and it is not. And that's why I changed the title to Dog of War, because that was the name of the breeding scheme that the Aryan Brotherhood had for this operation to sell vicious, dangerous, fierce dogs called presa canarios. And they were going to be used to guard pot farms, meth labs, heroin labs of Aryan Brotherhood associates throughout California. So that's what needed to be told, the story of what the Aryan Brotherhood is in here. And it wasn't really told in the first book. So 20 years later, I have pared it down to bare bones and incorporated some of the more racy things, because that's really... You know, when it gets that racy with this triad and this love triangle they're trying to create with the Aryan Brotherhood, it's bizarre.
It is completely bizarre. I heard a phrase a couple books back that pathology trumps intellect. If this book isn't the banner child for that,
right?
Because you have two very successful attorneys,
right,
who destroy their lives by getting involved with this madness.
Right.
And you sit there and say, well, why would you do that? Well, they're not thinking. It's not rational decision making.
No. They lost touch with reality at some point. And, to get into a little bit, the meat of this story, you have Paul Schneider, who's a Svengali. He's like a Hannibal Lecter from behind Pelican Bay Supermax prison walls and gates and fences. He's in the shoe where the worst of the worst are, the security housing unit. That is where you are locked down 24/7. You never get out. And Schneider decided with his cellmate, another Aryan Brotherhood guy, that they were going to start a dog breeding ring with presa canario dogs. And those dogs are not even acknowledged or credited by the American Kennel Club. The dogs, presa canario, come from the Canary Islands. And in ancient times, those dogs were used to take down bulls in bull rings. The Canary Islands banned the presa canario in the 1960s, as have many countries throughout the world. However, they're not illegal to own here. They're just not recognized here. And Paul Schneider realized this dog is a mastiff times a pit bull on steroids. And he can then make a good profit getting them for about, I don't know, $1,300 or $1,200 a piece, selling them for double that to his associates that get out on the outside. Because if you're Aryan Brotherhood, it's blood in, blood out. You have to kill someone to get in it. And if you leave, you're going to get killed. So all of his associates on the outside that are the Aryan Brotherhood is a RICO, racketeering organization that is interested not just in their ideology of white supremacy and all of that crap, but, you know, with the swastikas and 666 and tattoos. But no, they are interested in making money because that's power. And so they deal primarily in drug trafficking and sex trafficking. And that is where these dogs come in, because these dogs are going to guard those illegal activities, keep anybody else out.
Yeah, because you see that dog. Are you going near that parking lot, that building, that car, that... No. You could be making all the mess in the world in your car, and I ain't going near it if I see those two dogs or any other dog like that growling and lunging out the fence. And that's what they do if they're trained to do that. Now, I met people that own presa canario dogs that are sweet as can be. And one of them, the picture is in the book, because I do not blame this on the dogs. Yes, these can be the most fierce fighting dogs on the planet because they have the muscle structure, they have the size, they have the jaw size. They're truly huge. However, they can also be sweethearts. And it's a question of who raised them. And in this case, people thought that they were being raised as fighting dogs. They were supposed to be raised as fierce dogs, but that's not how this happened, right? So right. I would like to hear your opinion of the whole thing with Janet and Paul. Janet just seemed like this normal soul to the earth, you know, just solid woman, lived her whole life kind of in the shadows, wasn't one of those standouts, living on a farm, doing her thing. And out of her Christian heart, she starts to correspond with this thug that's in the Aryan Brotherhood in prison. And like you said, he is a Svengali. She falls in love with him.
Right.
And uses her as the person on the outside who is going to be his hands, be his car, get these dogs, raise these dogs.
Right.
And she thinks, oh, he loves me. I'm going to raise puppies.
And we're going to split the profits, and this will be good. And yes, I'm in love with him. He loves me. All of that. So he lured her in. And when having done that, all right, then things start going wrong at her farm in Hayfork with the dog. So she accepts the delivery of 2 presa canarios that grow, and ultimately this female has a litter. She now has, you know, up to 6 presa canarios running around her property. And from the beginning, the 2 dogs, you know, Bane and it was Fury and Isis, the name's confused, but Bane and her were part of this, right? The 2 dogs were eating through their pens, were eating through their fences, were absolutely out of control. And she started to chain them to trees. Janet could not handle these dogs. She never owned a dog. She's not a dog person. Nonetheless, this type of dog. And because of it, as they continued to escape, they started to eat her livestock. They were eating her chickens, and then they were eating her sheep, and then they were killing, and they killed her daughter's cats.
Yes.
And it was at that point that Daisy, the daughter, said, I don't think we should have these dogs anymore. But the odd part is Janet was attached to the dog. She was so naive in terms of what she actually had there that she was still, felt like she was a mom to these puppies and these dogs. She didn't want to release the dogs.
Oof.
And Paul Schneider, in his mind, this woman, this Patsy that he found, he had somebody from a church go find this woman, now isn't doing the right thing by him. These expensive dogs he bought, she's not raising them correctly. She's not giving them the proper, proteins and supplements, and strengths and whatever. And he decides, you know what? You can't. I'm sending them elsewhere. And so what happened is that he calls his attorneys that he's become romantically involved with, but not at that point. They're associates. They're not, I don't know the romance is there just yet before they get the dogs, but it had started. And Marjorie Noller and Robert Noel, the two attorneys who once were part of San Francisco society, going to the Getty Mansion for functions and events, etc., now join forces with Paul Schneider to create this dog of war breeding scheme. And they go to Hayfork, California, all the way up in the northern part of California, and demand the dogs and threaten Janet, if you don't give us the dogs, we are going to take your farm and put a lien on the farm. So they're threatening her. They get there and they want the blessing, a legal blessing of them taking the dogs, and they get a veterinarian, Dr. Donald Martin, which you'll see in the book, and it was entered into evidence later, to say it's fine. These are good dogs. But instead, what Dr. Martin wrote is these dogs are not fit to be around any people, no less being brought into the city of San Francisco. So they were warned. And they were aware that these dogs have already tasted blood. What do? Drive them into the ritziest part of San Francisco where they live in a little apartment, Pacific Heights, and they are hiding those dogs in that apartment. The other puppies, by the way, they allowed to be sent down to Aryan Brotherhood associates in Los Angeles. So, they were helping this whole scheme. And, in the midst of all that, hiding the dogs, these dogs were starting to scare people and lunge at people and hurt other animals and bite people slightly, not really had to go to hospitals.
Bane bit off Robert Noel's finger.
Yep.
He excused it. It wasn't quite the same after they had to do surgery and sew it back up. And I'm like, that's what I'm saying. I'm reading this and I'm like,
yes. So the dog, they knew what they had. For Bane to be able to sever Robert Noel's finger, and they had to go to the hospital for 4 days and have it reattached. You have frightening, dangerous dogs. They could barely control these dogs. But it wasn't until after the death of Diane Whipple, their next door neighbor, that anybody in San Francisco put the dots together. Because there had been 40 incidents all throughout San Francisco with these two dogs. But nobody put the dots together because they were in various different dog parks and different streets and different areas. And the dogs could be nice. They would go to dinner and they'd have the dog sitting on the sidewalk with them. And they could be very nice, but they could also be not nice. And with an animal like that that's already tasted blood, you can't play with that. But they were. They didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And when Diane Whipple was killed, the day she was killed, January 26, 2001, Marjorie Noller, who watched the attack, claimed she got in the middle and tried to save Diane, didn't have any marks on her, didn't have any puncture wounds, nothing was ripped in her clothing. She never tried to do that. But what she did do is after Diane Whipple was laying there, stripped completely naked by two vicious dogs, that Bane weighed 140 pounds, Hera weighed 100 pounds, that's 240 pounds of dog on top of this athlete, stripping her nude, 77 bite wounds. She's gurgling, desperately trying to move to safety toward the elevator. And Marjorie Noller has the audacity to just walk right over her to pick up her keys so she can take her dogs into her apartment.
Ugh.
She never calls 911. She don't know anything. Another neighbor called 911. Think of that.
Right. And then the neighbor was peeking out the peephole.
Right.
And sees all this going on. She's terrified to even look out at what's going on.
Right.
And she's in safety of her apartment.
Yes, exactly.
It is absolutely mind-blowing. I said, I'm tired. I've misread. I had to go back and read it again. And I'm like, no, this really happened.
Yes.
Why do people do what they do? Why do they make these choices? And I cannot imagine this kind of carnage, this poor woman. The only place she wasn't bit was her skull and the bottom of her feet.
Yes.
And you just get your keys and worry about the dogs and getting them back.
And more than that, I mean, that's just, it's sick. But beyond that, when the police get there, the animal care and control people take Bane, the male, away to have him euthanized. And Marjorie agrees that Bane was the attacker. But she tells police, Hera was only tugging at Diane's pants. She wasn't involved in the attack. What? You have Diane Whipple, completely stripped naked. Hera's at the feet. Bane is at the head, at the jugular. What part of these two dogs were involved in this killing doesn't she get? But she actually fights for Hera. And she fights for Hera, and they go to a vicious and dangerous dog hearing. And now all the people have started seeing this on the news about these two people and these two dogs, and they're recognizing them. And they're calling the police, the San Francisco police, the animal care and control, reporting incident after incident. So out of 40 incidents that happened around San Francisco, a number of people testified at the dog hearing for Hera. And Marjorie Miller sat there and called all of them liars. And we're showing good dog pictures to people. Oh, look, they're happy dogs. They're wonderful dogs. I mean, this is who they became.
Oh.
And another thing that started this to be a crazy story in San Francisco is that days after Diane Whipple was killed, Robert Noel and Marjorie Noller drove up to the gates of Pelican Bay. Now, that's in Crescent City area. That's all the way on the tip next to Oregon. And they're there to hold a press conference at the gates of Pelican Bay because they're being followed around by media at this point to announce that they have adopted Paul Schneider as their son, 38-year-old Paul Schneider, who's the Aryan Brotherhood leader, which they're not reporting that. But this is what tips the investigators off as to what does the Aryan Brotherhood have to do with this? Because they're up there at the gates of Pelican Bay. That's how crazy they are. Why are they bringing attention to that? They want everyone to know they've adopted this inmate, 38-year-old inmate. They are absolutely psychotic people, out of touch with reality, completely narcissists.
Oh, God.
And then after all of this, and them getting the heat is going more and more and more, as the San Francisco police and the DA's investigators and the California Department of Corrections special agents, 3 agencies working in tandem, are able to get a special master to go in for the legal and confidential mail that's in Snyder's cell that Noller and Noel never thought anyone would see. And they open it all up, and that's when you find out that they're part of the breeding scheme, that they're sexually involved with Schneider, that they have all these fantasies and bizarre connections with him. They want to be a family of 3, and it's just so twisted.
I could not believe it. Like I said, I had to go back and read again, and I'm like, this is absolute madness.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the other thing that happened is that soon after the San Francisco public was up in arms, the national media caught it, and they went on Good Morning America with Elizabeth Vargas. And during that interview, the anchor says to them, what do your dogs killed your next door neighbor. You take responsibility for that. And Marjorie says, responsibility? No, they did not take responsibility for it.
Wow.
In fact, what they did was have the audacity to blame Diane Whipple for the attack. So they blamed the victim.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. And Robert Noel had demanded that somebody go in for evidence to Diane's perfume cabinet and her medicine cabinet. What steroids was she on? What perfume did she wear? How did she somehow attract Bane to her?
Yeah.
Another thing, as they're fighting for the life of Hera, the head of animal care and control, Vicki Gobeck, says to me, and she's a dog lover. She's an animal lover. She said, if I had a dog that killed somebody, I would not want to have that dog anymore. This is why the national book was called The Red Zone, because Cesar Millan, who I interviewed back in time, at that point he was not yet quite the dog whisperer, said to me, these dogs have entered into a red zone, meaning there's no turning back.
Oh, absolutely.
Once they've tasted blood. I mean, for them to say they have no responsibility, and Marjorie Knoller tells the Good Morning America anchor, I don't know why she didn't just go into her apartment and close the door. I would have. I mean, really?
The disconnect with reality is frightening. Because psychotic people can come across as perfectly fine.
Yeah.
They're not talking to themselves and, they'll bathe and get up and get dressed. They can look perfectly normal and be completely unattached. And the two of them are feeding off each other.
And feeding on
their
Paul Schneider as well.
And then throw Paul in there. And I mean, it's perfect storm.
So as the letters are being opened by the various investigating teams, they're realizing that a couple of things. One is, on the day that Diane Whipple was killed, Robert Noel wrote a letter to Paul Schneider, and this is how it started. Bane is dead, as is one of our neighbors. Okay?
Dog first.
Of course. And don't even give the name of the neighbor. The other thing is that Diane Whipple had been bitten on the wrist by Bane not long before the lethal attack. All right? But what happened, she's an athlete, she's a lacrosse coach, she's strong, 33 years old. Bane, at 140 pounds, jumps up, lunges, and grabs her by the wrist. But she had a sports watch on, and that watch prevented any puncture wounds. So she's freaked out. She calls her partner, her gay partner, Sharon Smith, and has her run home because she's freaked out. And when Sharon gets there, she takes the watch off and sees that, well, there's only really some pink, skin. There's no break in the skin. So, Sharon didn't know what to do. Diane's freaked out, but what are you going to do? There's no having to go to a hospital, nothing. But from that point forward, Diane is deathly afraid of those dogs. And of course, dogs can sense that fear.
Sure they do.
Right? And she's next door. So she's constantly having to be frightened and getting in and out of the elevator if these people happen to be in that same moment. And at one point, she's in the elevator. Robert Noel gets in there with the dogs, and he writes a letter to Paul Schneider saying, the dynamic duo came into the elevator, and there was this timorous, mousy blonde who almost had a heart attack. He's bragging about it to Paul Schneider.
Oh, my God.
All the time, whatever the dogs did that was lunging and frightening people, he is bragging to Schneider because they're raising these fierce dogs. And later at the trial, the prosecutor asked Noel, who was that mousy blonde? And he says, Diane Whipple. Had no concern whatsoever. Were you concerned that she almost had a coronary? Not particularly. That's the answer in court.
Yeah, how's that going to go over with the jury, with the public? All he's concerned about is providing these vicious dogs. If Diane is in the mousy blonde, is in the elevator terrified, well, he's done his job for the Aryan Brotherhood.
Exactly.
See, I told you this was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
The dog's doing nothing. We're just in an elevator. Someone's quaking.
Right.
He's done his job. He's bragging.
Exactly.
It's absolutely mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. And then, of course, you get into the bizarre sex. And, I mean, in this case, the fantasies of Marjorie Knoller, the book, I've had to carve out elements in the book that were just too racy for publication because it's so graphic. And what both of them are writing back and forth to Schneider, and what he's drawings of them as a family, and her weird posing and a cape that you've seen the pictures inside the book where she thinks she's the vixen of all time. And meanwhile, she should not be in any cape with a bustier. And she should not be doing that.
No. But it's just more evidence of how her view is so twisted that she's really not connected with the reality of what she really is, what she looks like.
Yeah, nothing. And then you have Noel writing letters and telling people and bragging about the size of Bane's balls, which, I hate to even say it, but that was going on too, Pierre. Who does that? You're talking about the dog's balls at the same time that and she's hinting about experimenting with the dogs. What?
They crossed over. I mean, the society and any sense of normality is violated. And frankly, you don't do that with your pets.
Yeah, really.
You don't do that.
That's animal abuse, actually.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. That's horrific animal abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, those poor animals, first they're raised by someone who had no business raising strong, dominant dogs like this.
Mm-hmm.
But then once they've killed the goats and they've eaten the cat, and they're predators at that point, and they know it and they like it.
Yeah.
And now you've got these people doing God only knows what else to them.
So now they never thought they'd be charged criminally for this. As it turns out, one of the good things that came out of the death, the killing of Diane Whipple, is that at the time, Governor Greg Davis in California closed a loophole in the law, which now says you will be held criminally responsible for the actions of your dog. So that needed to happen. And this case forced the hand of that happening. The other thing that happened out of this case is that Sharon Smith, the gay partner to Diane, wanted to file a wrongful death suit because, her partner was murdered. And her civil attorney said, you can't do that because gay partners have no rights to do that in this United States. And lo and behold, because of her efforts and her civil attorney, Michael Cardoza, they were able to get legislation passed that same year, 2001, when this happened, saying that you can sue civilly for a wrongful death of your partner. And that was a precursor to gay marriage being legalized, So good things came out of Diane Whipple's death, if you want to call them good. I mean, there's certainly, you want to know that something changed, that Diane didn't just die in vain.
Right.
But
I always look for that silver lining.
Yeah, right.
And there it is.
There is. But the whole idea that Marjorie Knoller and Robert Noel thought that they were not going to be held criminally responsible, that they were going to stick to their guns and say, these dogs are good dogs, they never harmed anyone, they've never done anything wrong, and just completely flat out lie and think that they can get away with it. They don't realize that all these other people have called in with all those innocents, that the law enforcement has all that now, plus they have all of the confidential and legal mail that the judge unsealed to show that these two lawyers are part of that scheme. And when that happens, and they're in the grand jury actually asks the prosecution if they can up Marjorie's charge to second-degree murder for manslaughter. Now, prosecutors don't typically want to do that. They don't want to overcharge because you're using taxpayer money. And if you overcharge and you don't, and you lose the case, it's something is better than nothing. But so that was a very unusual thing, Hammer told me, that a grand jury would even ask for that. And they thought about it and decided, okay, we're going to charge her with second-degree murder. And the standard for it, and Jim Harrow was very clear in explaining this to the jury. It's as if you have numerous DUIs. And now you are drunk, you get behind your car, and you kill somebody because you're drunk driving. That car has become a lethal weapon. That 3,000-pound car is a lethal weapon, and you know it because you've already been down those roads. You already know drinking and driving, something bad's going to happen. So it's the same kind of thing where all these incidents, these dogs have been happening and all of these horrors, and they know that these dogs are capable of killing. That was what the jury decided. So Robert Noel was not even present in the building when the dog attack happened. Still, they found him guilty of manslaughter, all right, and sentenced him to 4 years. Marjorie Knoller, who was present and was letting her dogs be off leash in the hallway to just run and go murder Diane Whipple, the jury found her guilty of second-degree murder. They understood the charge. They understood what this meant. And a few weeks later, everybody is now back up in San Francisco because it got moved to LA, the trial. There's so much publicity in San Francisco, they had to change a venue. So everybody's back up in San Francisco in Judge Warren's court, and he comes out on sentencing day, and he looks kind of peculiar. What's happening with this guy? And he says, I've been thinking about it. I've been giving this a lot of thought, And it's my opinion that Marjorie Miller could not have known that her dogs would kill. So I am going to charge and sentence her for manslaughter and give her 4 years.
Oh my God.
Now, think of this. You're in a courtroom. I've been in courtrooms for 35 years. What? The judge just threw out the jury's verdict? At first, I didn't think you could do it. I mean, he was doing it. I had to look it up and find out that it is possible and it has been done, but it is very rare and usually never done.
Yeah.
How do you throw out the jury's verdict? That jury sat through weeks and weeks of testimony. You know, you've got 12 people and the 4 alternates, and this is their decision based on the evidence, based on the testimony, and the judge just decides to wipe it away?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about devastation in the courtroom that day by Diane's family and friends and the prosecution and anyone in there who's watching this and thinking, what in the world is going on now? This is crazy.
You thought it couldn't get any crazier.
You thought it couldn't get any crazier, right?
And it did.
And it did. It did. So a few years later, in 2005, I was covering the Michael Jackson trial for Fox, and Jim Hammer was also covering that trial, Michael Jackson, for Fox. And we were closed off to the rest of the world during the Michael Jackson trial. They took our phones, they took our BlackBerries. It was all gone. You weren't allowed to leave the area. If you did, you couldn't come back in the courtroom. It was a whole, you were a prisoner. All the media were. So we didn't have access to the outside world. And one day at the end of the day, Jim Hammer comes up to me and says, you won't believe it. You won't. What? The higher court, the appellate court, has sent this case back down to Judge Warren and told him to reconsider what he did with the verdict.
Yes.
And sure enough, Warren had to then reinstate the second-degree murder conviction against Marjorie Miller, who had been over 4 years. She had served her time and was living in Florida, having a great old time for herself. Or I think maybe she almost served half time. Whatever it was, she was in Florida. She got clawed back to California and put in Chowchilla Women's Prison. And she's still there. She's still trying to get out. She had a parole hearing again in February of 2026. And they're not letting her out because guess what? She is an associate of the Aryan Brotherhood.
Yes.
She is a danger to society.
Yeah.
And she's never getting out.
No, she hitched her wagon to the Aryan Brotherhood.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that resulted in the death of Diane Whipple and all the ripple effects of all of that.
Yep.
I mean, it's a crazy story. They got there in terms of justice. Couldn't believe the judge, but he also learned, no, you can't do that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Thank God for the appellate court that they had the vision to say, wait, what?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
It's oh my God.
It's mortifying. The story is mortifying. There's no two ways about it. And the fact that, the justice almost was taken away. What little justice there was almost taken away. It's another crowning piece of insanity on this whole crazy cake.
Yeah, it is. The contempt for humanity, for your fellow human beings, is just so glaring. When you listen to what they said to people, answering questions in court, to the media, they were consistent. That's for certain. I mean, their answers, the narcissism, we have to come up with a new word because narcissism isn't enough.
You're right. I don't know what delusions of grandeur comes to mind. That's one of the things that they certainly thought. She thought she was going to be able to get Paul Schneider out of Supermax lockdown. As it turns out, Paul Schneider actually agreed to do an interview with Rolling Stone magazine soon thereafter, back in time. And when that happened, he had a request to be transferred out of the California system because the AB now put a hit out on him because the AB, the Aryan Brotherhood, did not want any attention. They did not want it known that they were attached in any way to the killing of Diane Whipple. And so when Schneider did the interview with the Rolling Stone magazine, it was for them, foreboding, and they would put a hit out on him. So he got moved to a different prison. We don't know where he is exactly. And I have looked it up. I think I know where he is, but it changes. Nonetheless, he had to leave his own clan because that's how lethal they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they want all this publicity about their secret dog rearing group that are going to protect meth labs. They want that splashed all over the newspaper.
Not. Right. Right.
Didn't quite think that one through there.
No, Schneider didn't think it through because you remember, he's the shot caller. So in his mind, nobody can touch him. Wrong.
Yeah.
He's a monster, but he's dealing with a world of monsters, and those other monsters will eat you. They will cannibalize you. And this is, part of all of it is just, again, how in the world did these two lawyers who were at one time normal people, seemingly, go over to the dark side to the extent that they did?
I've read a lot about couples that kill and, groups like this. And I wonder if they had never met, would it have come to this? Because, they'll feed on each other. So it's one of those questions you'll never know the answer to. But I have to wonder if their paths crossing just created this, toxic.
You mean Marjorie and Bob, or the lawyers with Schneider?
Well, any of them. I mean, it all works together. I was thinking of Bob and Marjorie. But
I mean, I guess if they never met, never got married, we wouldn't be here with this story. But then again, that's a hypothetical that really...
I know. It's one of those questions you'll never know the answer to.
I don't think that they were inherently bad people, but something changed and snapped in them. And I think Robert Noel was evil. He died alone in a van after he got out of prison. Just a very sad sack, which he should be because he was a monster. He talked in circles too much. He was too obsessed with the dogs. There was something wrong with him, as I interviewed him many, many times over at the prison, which was in Diablo, California, and then through the telephone calls I was making back and forth, reporting all of this. He is a sick puppy. He is a sick man who just loved the idea of having that power as well, and having these dogs that could frighten, because he's a bully. Now he's got gigantic dogs that he can bully people with even more. And the fact that he had no concern, Jill, whatsoever for the safety of anybody, children that were almost hurt, other people's animals, dogs, it just goes on and on. What in the world kind of people did they turn into?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had more insight.
Jill, there's no way to get insight into this. You've read the book.
No, you've talked to this man. Yes.
Yes.
It's why it's disturbing, because they're so far gone. Again, as a person who values human life, it just absolutely is mind-blowing.
Yep.
It was all about, when I say it's all about his needs and his ego, but I think you're right in that he was reaching for that power.
Yep.
That he had never really had.
Correct.
He was going to be this warlord.
Exactly.
He was going to have this influence. He's going to be part of this network that he, I guess, never had when he was certainly younger. But as an attorney functioning in society, being a civilized person, he never got that.
Right.
And for some reason, it just, all the blinders came off and he was all in.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely incredible story.
Well, like I said, I do think that this is a story that has not gotten coverage, and people will be stunned to learn of it, because back in time, people thought, well, this is just a case about somebody who was killed by a dog, and it's horrifying, it's mortifying, but, there's not much more to the story. Not in this case.
No. You did it again. You did it again. Here it is. I mean, it's incredibly well written. The way you take the threads and then bring everything together to present this as you're reading in disbelief, it's masterful.
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate that. I really do.
Murder Bookies, it is just another book you have to put on your shelf. It's that simple. You are never going to read anything like this, ever. Oh, we haven't even really gotten into a lot of the nitty-gritty.
Right. Well, we need something for people to read.
Well, the weather's finally getting nice.
Yes.
Right. Pools will be opening up. But it was still 30 this morning. But it is, the sun's shining. I'll take it.
Yes, I'll take it. I'll take it.
So, Aphrodite, what are you doing next?
So actually what I'm doing next is right now, the movie about Michael Jackson is coming out called Michael on April 24th. This is the biopic. This is a $150 million movie that Jermaine's son, Michael's nephew, is playing Michael. I saw some clips of previews the other night in the theater. I went to see a movie last weekend, and it is, you can tell this is going to be a phenomenon. At the same time, last year was the 20-year anniversary of the trial, and I wrote a book, Michael Jackson Conspiracy, which went after the media, because back then there was no social media at all. So you had no checks and balances on what the media was doing. And I realized at the end of the trial that I was drinking the Kool-Aid, and that this was not a kid that Michael Jackson molested. It was orchestrated by the media to look one way and never show anything exculpatory. And when he was exonerated, the media just threw up their hands and walked away. They didn't apologize. They didn't say anything. So I decided afterwards, having thought about it, I'm going to write this book. And I thought I was writing the end of my career, honestly, because I turned on myself and everybody else to show that we didn't report what was really going on in the courtroom. And the book, of course, has been now around for 20 years, and it's been published in languages from China to Japan to back again throughout Europe, Spanish, you name the French, whatever. But it's never been an audiobook. And so what I'm working on right now is creating the audiobook for it in time for the movie release. And I'm hoping I'll get it out a little bit before the movie release, because I do know that there's a documentary about the trial 20 years later. I don't know when they're going to air it, but I guarantee once the movie comes out, they're going to start trying to trash Michael. And I need to allow fans to see the truth about what the media was doing back then. So that's my I'm working on that as I'm doing the dog of war stuff. So I'm packed.
You are busy.
Yeah.
You're a busy woman. Yeah. I love it.
Busy.
Well, good for you. I'm glad you spoke up and spoke about what you observed and what you realized.
Yeah. So that's my next thing. And then I am planning to release my other books as audiobooks, which is a whole job. It's a lot of work. It's a whole thing. And then I have one other book that I'm going to release early next year. And so, I mean, I'm just cooking with fire.
Good for you. Keep the books coming my direction. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You are always welcome on the Murdershelf Book Club podcast.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Same here. Okay. Gotcha, girl. All right.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye now.
Thank you for listening.
I truly appreciate you joining me on this journey through Dog of War and some of the best true crime books, because these cases matter so much. Diane Whipple mattered. Her death mattered. It changed laws. It made a difference. And you get that when you read the book. We have Crimecon 2026 in Las Vegas coming up. Please come by Creators Row and see me. Our Crimecon meetup is Thursday, May 28th, after the kickoff party in the lobby bar, the big one by the reception desk. Think 10 p.m. local time. I can't wait to see you. And then I'll be on Creators Row with swag and stories, so let's take some photos. If you enjoy my podcast, please share it with friends and family, and find me on X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and repost. You can email me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com and let me know what you think of this new book. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss my next True Crime Book Club trilogy, The Caretaker's Game by Charles Wallace. This is not about homicides or serial killers, but it still explores a frightening and devastating crime committed against some of the most vulnerable members of our society, the elderly, especially those suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's-like illnesses. When adult children, often living a goodly distance away from their parent, discover that the parent needs assistance, finding a reliable caregiver is crucial, allowing some semblance of peace of mind, knowing that their loved one is in good hands. Charles Wallace's mother, Joelle Fleming, her caretaker, smiled, saw to everything, and quietly seized control of Joelle Fleming's life and legacy. Charles Wallace and his siblings were completely unaware that anything was wrong until it was too late. Over the course of 3 years, more than $1 million vanished from their fiercely independent mother's accounts after she placed her trust in her caregiver. This shocking revelation sent Charles on a quest to uncover the truth about what happened to his mother. This is not a tale of woe, but you will empathize with Charles as he sifts through emails, accounts, finding passwords, checking out the professionals involved, and trying to hold them to account in search of answers. And it serves as a cautionary tale that everyone with an aging parent should heed. I know I did. The caregiver's game is part forensic investigation, part family memoir, and a practical warning for families with elderly parents. A special thank you to my Murdershelf Book Club Patreon group for helping me to choose this somewhat unusual true crime book, which is essential for protecting a vulnerable segment of our society. I see you as you hear me. See you next time. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.